So I want to respect everybody's schedule. So let's see. We have let's have Port Royal up here, Van. We have Bluffton's up here. We have Hilton Head. We have Beaufort, Port Royal, and we have an empty chair. Mr. Steese, would you please join us?
Sure.
No empty chairs, let's try.
No empty chairs allowed. For everyone at the dais has the information, but for those sitting in the public, over there is the agenda, and it's also listed up there. But there's a packet of information that we will be getting to when we get to item number C. So if you want to get, they're all over there. They're stapled together. Okay, we're going to get right into it. I received in the email no nominations for the offices. So, you know, I'm getting close to the record for unopposed elections, which only means I'm doing things that nobody else wants to do. So we'll see if the streak continues. But at any rate, may I have a nomination for chair of Soloco for the coming year?
I nominate Mr. Harry Williams. Second.
Oh, wow. Any discussion or any further nominations?
I guess that means you accept.
If elected, I will serve. I think that's an original, isn't it? Didn't I? No? Okay, if there's no further comments, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Next is vice chair. The incumbent right now is Mayor Perry. May I have a nomination for vice chair?
Nominate Alan Perry.
We have, that's what he gets for not showing up. Okay, we have a nomination. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Please inform Alan that he won in a landslide.
But let him know you voted vigorously against it.
And he will never be late for another meeting, I'm sure, where there's elections. The next office is secretary, and that's really just to be, there's no minutes taking. It's just to be part of the executive committee if we have such a thing. So I don't even know who the incumbent is. Does anyone know? I think it might have been Joe Passaman. To have someone from the county, but I'm not sure about that. But regardless, since we don't know who the incumbent is, may I have a nomination for someone to serve as secretary?
Do you want someone from the county?
You know what? We've typically not had it because they're not publicly elected, but that doesn't mean it can't be. So. It's up to the board. We have no rules one way or the other.
I'll nominate Larry too. You don't do anything, Larry.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, so you should be good at that.
Oh, my.
I'm sorry, I couldn't. He gave me an opening. I couldn't resist. It's that New Jersey humor, Larry. Sorry.
You're not alone.
We have a nomination. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. So we have
Congratulations.
congratulations,
Idle term.
and please, Larry, and tell Alan to take down their signs within the 24 hours. Okay. Next, as you know, Soloco asked to form a child care subcommittee, and it's been chaired by Mr. Orlando Lewis. Also on that board is the Jody Levitt, and also Doug McGill is on that as well. Recently, they met here in our office with Mr. John Schoorer from the GIC, who also has a subcommittee. So Mr. Orlando has agreed to give us an update on where the committees are and potential collaboration with the GIC committee. So, Mr. Orlando Lewis, welcome.
All righty. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to say congratulations to our newly elected officials. It was a heated, contested voting process, but glad to see you guys have been seated this morning. So again, my name is Orlando Lewis. I'm the early Head Start Director for Beaufort Jasper EOC. I also sit as the president of the South Carolina State Head Start Association. But thanks to you guys, I'm now your chairperson of this child care subcommittee. Over the past several months, we have Jody and Doug and I have kicked around quite a few ideas as relates to many of the strategies and solutions that may be needed to address the child care concerns in the Lowcountry area. Recently, as Mayor Williams indicated, Jody, myself, and Mr. John Score, we met to discuss some of the new ideas that may be on the scene right now. One of the particular strategies or solutions that's being kicked around at the state, and we was recently at the subcommittee, and DSS presented this idea, and this is something that's been piloted by the state of Michigan, but now it's actually something they're actually doing on a routine basis. And this particular model is called a tri-share childcare model. This particular model is designed to benefit families as it relates to subsidizing childcare. This particular model is broken down into three phases. The child care will be paid for at a rate of one third by the family. An additional one third be paid for by the employer, and an additional one third be paid for by the state. So this is the tri-share model that once again was piloted by the state of Michigan. It was a huge success, and this is something that we're looking to try here in South Carolina. I know DSS recently met with the South Carolina Joint Committee and presented this as a potential solution, and there was an ask on the table as relates to dollars to be allocated to this particular option. One of the things that we want to present to Soloco is for us to try this particular model in the Lowcountry, for us to be a pilot hub in the state of South Carolina. We're asking that our policymakers here on Soloco back us in this request to be a hub, and also like to sit down with the SC Joint Committee. I think Ms. Shannon Erickson sits on that committee as well.
Yes.
To have a discussion with her and also their team about how we could how some of those funds that's been asked for at the state level be placed in the Lowcountry for us to use those dollars and use some of our partners here to facilitate this model in the state of South Carolina. I know Ms. Jody and John have met with members on Hilton Head. They have some signatures to support this particular model. So work has begun there, but we also like to make sure that we sit down with Soloco to have additional discussions in terms of how we will properly execute this particular model. So I do want to open the floor to questions as it relates to the tri-share model, what it would look like, and particularly your thoughts on this particular model.
Okay, for those on the board, you need to press the button on the microphone and talk into it. When you have a green light, that'll tell you that you are live. I'll start with the board members up here, and there are also board members sitting in the audience. Valerie Guzman from Hardyville. We have Scott Marshall from Beaufort. Do we have any other board members sitting out there? No. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Lewis?
I have one. Can you just elaborate a little bit on what support would look like from the municipalities or from the county?
Okay, not a problem. So one of the biggest things, or I should say, I ask, is just simply supporting the subcommittee in the delivery of this particular idea. One of the biggest things that we would like to see happen is number one, there be a strong understanding of the of the tri-share model. Number two, that there be discussions with other members from the SC Joint Committee as relates to our endeavor to participate and be the pilot of this particular model in the state of South Carolina. Then also for us to have some conversations with the powers to be at DSS, who will probably facilitate this model in the state of South Carolina, so that we can have that inroad as it relates to conversation with them. So your voice is very important. Obviously carries influence. So we want to have that support from you all in that regard.
Josh, if I just might add, John and Orlando shared more detailed information about the Tri-Share program, and I will forward to the Soloco board at the end of the meeting.
Okay, and I just noticed, I was reading some of the emails in the attachment. I'm not on this thread, so can we make sure that I do get that email?
Okay. If anyone on the board or in the room is not getting the Soloco information, every board member should be on there, and everyone that's signed up who come to these meetings regularly should be getting like the agendas. And if not, please let me know and give me your email address, and I'll have the clerks make sure they do it. Some of the emails there, Josh, maybe they just sent it to me because a lot of them came in the last couple of days. So I just printed off the content. So I'll go in a little bit more of that when we get to the agenda topics.
Thank you. I was going to add just one little follow-up, and I can look this up, forgive my ignorance. But you said Michigan had started this?
Well, Michigan piloted it back in 2021.
Okay.
It has now become an official program within the state.
Okay, so there is enough data to support that it's something that has worked?
Yes.
Okay.
Who at the county, or who in the county for this, or the region, I guess I should say, for a pilot program, who's going to be the lead agency on that?
Well, we will hope when no one has come forward to execute this particular model. This is something that I know John and GIC have discussed. We do know that there are DSS has toyed around with the concept, and they presented to the South Carolina State Joint Committee on Early Child Education. So one of the things that we would like to see done is that we in the Lowcountry actually facilitate this particular model. So we would have to have a discussion as relates to who will participate in the Lowcountry. So that would be something that we would have to develop.
Anyone else from the board? I'd like to invite from the public Mr. John Score, who is chairing the GIC subcommittee, and see, John, if you would like to say a couple of words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of Soloco. I'd like to move from Tri-Share to a more general thought. You all have 25,000 people collectively who are living below the poverty line, and 18,000 people collectively who are living with food insecurity. A way I like to approach things, what are the obstacles that keep people who want to work for a living from doing so? And one of the obstacles, as more and more research has revealed, is the paucity of affordable, accessible, quality childcare, which keeps at least one parent out of the labor market to care for children. At the same time, you've got 7,000 small businesses in the 2 counties that are clamoring for workers. So you've got, how do we make that connection? They clamor for workers because South Carolina has the 4th from the bottom labor participation rate in the country out of all 50 states. We can do better. How do we do better? I'm here to suggest that meaningful reform is going to come from Columbia. We've got some people like Shannon Erickson and Senator Ross Turner who are working hard on that. But candidly, I'm not sure they've got the throw weight to make it happen. On the other hand, here in Beaufort and Jasper County, we've got a legislative delegation that is more and more recognized as powerful in Columbia. You're the think tank for your 2 county governments and the 7 municipalities. It's our thought that if you find a way to communicate with those parent governments so they in turn pass up the chain to our legislative delegation, we'd like you to make something happen. I think that would take us a long way to curing a problem that exists here in South Carolina. As to TriShare, we believe it is a useful additional arrow to add to the quiver. It's not the be all and end all, but not only Michigan, but North Carolina and Kentucky, and to varying degrees, 8 other states that are getting into it, are proving that it adds value. For an employer, it produces an employee who has a connection with that job and that enterprise. It promotes employee loyalty. It promotes stability. It promotes getting out of poverty. It promotes getting out of food insecurity because instead of one or no spouses working, you have an additional spouse working, all to the good. Not looking within TriShare for money from the counties or the municipalities, although that's a possibility, but we see more of a statewide play on this, instead looking for you to use the heft, the wisdom that you have to communicate with our 2 legislative delegations in pursuit of making something good happen in Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, John. Does anyone from the board have any questions for John and his statements?
I have a question.
I have a question, please. So, since we haven't seen the full TRICARE model, and as a grandparent of someone who pays a fortune in Georgia for childcare, I get it. When they do this, is this in lieu of salary, the employer's contribution?
In lieu of salary?
Yes.
No, in addition. What it works out to, based on the numbers that we're working with on Hilton Head, about 13,000 and change is the real operating cost to have a child in a seat. We're finding parents can afford to pay about half of that, okay? We're thinking in terms of a slightly more constrained model out on Hilton Head. We have a lot of people in the hospitality industry with tight margins.
Sure.
And so we thought 50, 25, 25, 25. That works out to $1.50 an hour on the employer's part for a 2,000 hour a year employee. That to us seems a very reasonable price to pay to avoid turnover and avoid the cost of having to recruit and train replacement workers.
And then does that become taxable income for the person receiving it? You might want to find that out.
Yeah, the answer to that is, I don't know. When I took tax at Georgetown Law, my tax professor looked at me when I reported on a case, and he said, "Surely, Mr. Score, you don't mean to say it stands for that." And that's been the history of me in taxation.
Well, I do AARP taxes, and I can tell you how it's put in there. It depends if it's taxable income to the recipient. So we just would investigate that.
What I do know is that South Carolina and the study group are moving towards making employer expenses paid on behalf of child care tax deductible.
Yeah.
But I could say I appreciate what you said because I feel exactly the same way. I'm actually doing the same thing as a grandparent with kids that need to be working more. And it's very expensive. It's really a hardship on us, my wife and I, because we're paying for 3 kids and it's not $600 a month anymore, it's up there and,
Right.
But it's for just exactly what you just described. And I totally agree with you that in order to get these young people back in the workforce where they're needed, not just for the income that they make, but for their sanity as well. Help is needed, and it's not just the ones that are making only $40,000 a year. I mean, the people that are making a lot more than that, it's still a struggle.
You're absolutely right. And throw on top of that the fact that amongst your constituents are 2,000 public school teachers who deal with the reality that 65% of the children they get through the door at kindergarten, first grade, do not have the developmental skills to begin a life of successful learning. We should flip that number. Let's get 65% of our kids ready to learn. Think of what the improvements would be in the outcomes in our public school system.
I have a question. I am an advocate for childcare. I think it's very important that we help our kids to be ready for school, be successful in school, and that we enable parents to work. I think those are laudable goals. My question is, have you seen in your experience or in your research pushback from others, say employees who don't have children, who may have an issue with an employer contributing to something like this?
The answer is no, I haven't, largely because we haven't implemented it here in the state. It's potentially there, but I satisfy myself for the moment with the notion that, again, this is just an additional arrow in the quiver, and depending on income levels, the state has other financial assistance availabilities to help people. So it won't help someone who doesn't have a job. It won't help someone who's maybe in a two-person landscaping service. And if we're talking about a BMW or another big corporation, they can probably put on their own in-house childcare for their employee. But there is a niche. And as far as I'm concerned, every child, every parent that we can help deserves that help.
Wholeheartedly agree. I was just asking the question from an employer standpoint and from a government standpoint. How do, has there been pushback, and if so, how was that
There's
overcome?
certainly the potential for it, but North Carolina and Kentucky and Michigan seem to have found a way to work through, and I'm sure we're smart enough here.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
I think it's a great program. I agree with the questions been asked. The only question I have is outside of this, and I know there's the committee at the state, are they looking at ways to encourage more child cares to open? Because I know one of the biggest issues we had right now is even if we had a program like this, there aren't enough seats for the children that need seats right now. And that's one of the struggles we're having, and one of the reasons, one of the things we're doing, we're putting a child care as part of the program. And I know that's why the hospital's doing it, are they looking at some, when it comes to the regulations or just encouragement to help people open up more facilities?
Yes, the answer to that question is yes. That was something that was also discussed at the South Carolina Joint Committee as well. I know that DSS is sending money or has provided grant funds to licensed child care facilities, and I know ABC Quality, which is another division of DSS, they're also doing the same as well for those programs who want to participate in the QRIS rating system as well. So the answer is yes. Also, there's also an additional initiative in place called Palmetto Drive to Five, where they are collecting data on all of the state providers who provide childcare services, and they'll be able to go to one single website to identify which particular entity would best serve their needs within their particular community. So you would simply go in, enter your address, and all of the childcare facilities in your local demographic area will pop up, and then you can choose from there. So there's some other solutions that they're putting in place to make childcare, to find childcare easier in the state of South Carolina. I would also like to add, as it relates to TRISHARE, I know in the state of Michigan, because South Carolina has already have subsidized childcare in place, in the state of Michigan, the federal poverty level is between 201% to 325%. So those families who fall below the 200% federal poverty level, then of course there are some subsidies already available for those families. So I'm sure DSS is looking at a very similar model as well, just to make you all aware of that.
And that was Palmetto Drive to
Palmetto
Thrive.
Drive to 5, yes, sir.
Any other questions? Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Stephen, I was just going to ask you if you could provide some more details about what it is that you're doing, because I understand I think you spoke about this previously at another event, to try and incentivize or attract that kind of business to come to the area. What are you looking at doing?
So we're doing an economic development project right now over in Buckwalter, and as part of that, we're actually getting one of the buildings back to use as an incubator, co-work kind of growth space. In that, we set aside 5,000 square feet for a childcare facility that we're using. We actually put an RFP out, and it's somebody who went through our DRCI program who's going to be starting a new childcare facility. And as doing that, we require them to be able to offer, I think it was 25 or the third or somewhere in that range of their seats for vouchers from the state to be able to make sure they were affordable. So it's one of the things we know if you're trying to get employers, childcare is a big, huge part of that. So we made that part of our economic development project. And then I know the hospital, they've done their childcare facility mostly for their employees, which is similar to like y'all were talking about with like BMW or other places being able to do their own. But we did a survey in researching on doing that, and what we found is, you're 18 to 24 months out for waiting for a spot for childcare in the town, and that's if you can afford to do that. So that's where my question came about, is trying to figure out a way to encourage just even more facilities, because if not, you can supplement it all day long, but if there's no spaces to go into, then you're still got 500 people fighting for 200 spaces. And then did you have another?
I just wanted more information on that.
One of the things, and I know, Scott, you're on the committee, the subcommittee. What would be the committee's thoughts, and that's why I was looking at Scott, even if it's not a direct support of something like TRICARE, but doing some sort of draft resolution for councils, county, local to consider to encourage this committee to address childcare and give some options of things that we think they should consider, and ask the councils to adopt that and share that, like we've done with the hate crime, like we've done with, I think it was distracted driving and some other things similar in the past.
And what Mr. Steese is asking, and John alluded to it too, if you could present a resolution, for lack of a better term, to this group. We have in the past all signed something that we've supported and sent it to Columbia. So if you could give us that model, and then, of course, we all have to take it back to our legislative bodies for their approval as well. But once we get that collective approval, and I think that's what Mr. Stevens is asking for, we can then vote on it and send it to send a very strong collective voice to Columbia that we would like to support certain things. But I think we need you to guide us on that verbiage, okay? If you and John and Jody could get together and give us a model, perhaps, for next meeting. Does that sound like a plan? Does anybody want to add to that or subtract?
No, I agree, Mayor, and that's where the only thing, I know it's going to have to be vague enough because we won't know what the true TRICARE program would look like, and that's where I was leaning on Scott, is he knows what he would have to take back to his council if he was to draft one up, is to make it vague enough just to know that this is an issue that we all kind of agree to, that it needs to be addressed. We're asking, they have this committee, ask the state to look into it, and here's some things that have worked elsewhere that we think the state should kind of investigate.
But
Send this to Columbia or go to our delegation first?
Any thoughts on that? That's a good question.
Maybe the committee and our
So-
delegates?
The committee and we have two delegations, Beaufort and Jasper.
Yeah.
Some of them overlap.
That's what I was thinking.
But the Beaufort delegation does have, I guess, more clout, if you will, than they've
Well,
had
in
in
this
a lot of
area.
years.
In
Well,
this
in
area.
the state. 'Cause they're chairman of a bunch of committees.
Right.
And so my question is, do we go through them first, then Columbia, or?
That would be, that would be my gut instinct, to take it first to our delegation and let them take it to wherever it needs to go.
And Shannon's on that.
And Shannon's on there. But I guess what we need to come to, I think the most powerful one would be if we all have the same resolution and each legislative body passes the same one, so we can send one voice to our delegation. So between what you offered to us and perhaps in advance of next meeting, I can send it to the board so they can red line where they want. So by the time we come to the next meeting, we have a document that we can all vote on. Does that sound like something, a plan? Again, anybody want to add to that or subtract?
And I don't mean to be a devil's advocate or anything, but,
You're a devil, so go ahead, advocate.
you know, that I could see something coming up as far as government and the private sector. You know, I mean, there are tons of people out there that own their businesses. You know, I mean, we've got some little close things with venues and stuff like that that we're starting to hear, you know, some pushback on. And I don't have the answer, and I'm not saying it can't be worked through, but I could almost guarantee that there would be a certain amount of opposition
Yes.
from the child care private sector, if we don't get it right, so.
I think that's where Ms. Levitt could be a big help in terms of, because she's in the business now. So your fingerprint on Ms. Levitt would probably be very helpful.
Yes.
One nice thing, if I could make a comment in response, at the end of the day, this is an old shipyard term, it'll be up to the Department of Social Services to design, fabricate, and install the program. And I expect that they have enough experience working with the child care providers to get things sorted out. If you asked me specifics and details right now, my answer would be, I can't tell because we haven't begun those discussions. But the important thing is to see the legislative delegation and the special committee and ultimately the legislature pass the authorizing legislation, put some money aside to fund it, and give the direction in general terms to DSS, which is another way of saying you won't get stuck with sorting that out.
Right. Sure.
Ask Dan if he wants to say anything. He's put a lot of legwork, Dan.
I was particularly not asking him, so he wouldn't have to listen to me.
I'm reading his face. I think
Okay.
you have something to-
Anyone else from the public, would anyone from the public like to make a comment or ask a question of the subcommittee or the board? And, you know, that includes anybody with the last name Wood. Ms. Levitt.
Thank you all. I just want to throw in, because as a provider, one of the things that we're not recognizing is that the capacity exists for additional seats. There are childcare providers currently who have the capacity, but we do not have the staffing available to fill that capacity. So it's beyond just the cost to provide. What's happening, if you talk to the people at TCL, if you talk to the people providing the educational curriculum at USCB, that funnel is decreasing. The number of people looking at early childhood is decreasing. And why is that? Because it's not a career that creates a sustainable wage, a living wage. So there are more issues than just how to pay for childcare. We have to look beyond that and try and figure out how can we balance providing a living wage for those people who are in a square box with an incredible amount of energy every day for 8 hours. My teachers are heroes, I'm telling you. Um, and affordability for parents. So there are a lot of other peripheral things that our committee needs to work on, but this is just step one. But I just don't want anybody to think we have to go out and build a whole lot of new childcare centers, because what we need to do is start by looking at the capacity that's available currently and how do we fill that capacity. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
If I could ask you just one question. What percentage of your employees, teachers, whatever the title is, that work at the daycare center or childcare center, have children there as well?
Right now, I have a very small percentage, maybe 2 or 3 of our families have children, but their children they've been with me long enough that their children have grown and aged out. And to someone's question, maybe it was yours, Angie, about, or I'm not sure, maybe. Anyway, the question about, well, how do you give to one employee and not to another? Well, in our case, we provide free tuition for our teachers that have children. I have teachers that don't have children. Nobody has questioned and said, why do they get it and I don't? So, it's all a matter of presentation from the corporate side. The other piece I just want to throw out there is we, John Score, myself, Tom Hens, we are also working on the business side with the Chamber of Commerce. The Hilton Head Chamber of Commerce has prioritized, and I'm going to say early childhood education instead of childcare, as a priority for our community. So has the state of South Carolina. We have met with representatives both from the state chamber and our local chamber, and they're on board with this and other things that we're talking about. So we have that business connection as well to try and pull the whole thing together.
Well, that's a big task. You have big shoulders, Mr. Lewis. So I guess that's why, because there are so many aspects that we need to come up with. As a former salesman, you always have to be clear what the ask is.
This is true.
So we want to come up with a collective voice and make sure we send a clear ask. What do we want them to do for us?
Yes.
And I couldn't even begin to answer that question. Mr. Wood, please come up to the, because we want
3 minutes, sir.
to make sure you record it in case we have to prosecute you later.
I just want to say thank you again to Jody. I have not had the pleasure of meeting you. Obviously, you're well versed on the topic, and we worked together a little bit, and she was eye-opening to me and showed me what I did not know, and that was one reason I didn't want to be involved on a committee any longer, because you got to put it where it's with people that are capable. The only other thing I would like to bring up, when we were working together, obviously you have the profit side and you have the nonprofit side. And the nonprofit side is tasked with fundraising a lot of times, and that's a horrendous task. And so I think we should consider that when you were dealing with an organization that's a nonprofit. The other thing I would only ask is the town of Bluffton, sometimes you have to hit a single before you hit a home run. And we had identified this issue some time ago. And so we've obviously made a movement forward that the town manager has already explained. So the only thing I would encourage all the people sitting at this table is to look at the model that Bluffton's started with and give us your pros and your cons. And we just had to start somewhere. We're not saying we've got the best automobile to drive, but we had to start somewhere. And it doesn't mean that we can't improve what we're doing somewhere down the road. So please take a look at it. Give the town manager your comments, pro or con, one way or the other. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm used to going and copying Bluffton, and so That would be easy for me to do. Hardyville, I'm sorry. Mr. Lewis, any other comments before we go on?
Well, there's one last item I would like, not an item, but just FYI for the board. Jody brought up a good point as relates to pay for early childhood providers. And one of the things that the federal government did in October of 24 was they created, well, this is particular and specific to Head Start, but they mandated that by year 2025, that all Head Start programs had to create pay parity between Head Start programs and the school district because they wanted to ensure that it was identified as a career field and that it would be a sustainable wage for those child care providers. So we know that the feds have already begun that process. So that's something that we'll have to definitely take a look at the state level as well and locally. Because to be able to fill those seats, as Jody stated, you have to have qualified personnel, but you have to have qualified personnel who are making a livable wage.
Are there any state or federal regulations mandating certain levels of pay, or is it just like any other business, whatever the market will bear?
Correct.
Okay.
That's all that I have.
Well, thank you very much. We have a lot. I'll just for the town of Hardyville, our council at our retreat yesterday did identify childcare as an objective, and that we would be looking to Soloco to help guide us. Now we'll have a model also from Bluffton to guide us. And I will present, Josh, we should present to council. If you are looking for a pilot volunteer, we'll ask our council if they want to be one of those pilots. And we have 2 council members here, so if they want to be a pilot, we'll let you know.
All right.
Okay. Next, we have the topics for the 2025 agenda. You'll see stapled together, and they're available for the public, as I mentioned earlier, the things I've received from various people. And I just summarized them. I also, on the second page, you'll see the poll for the 2024 agenda items, so there might be some things on that you may want to consider that we didn't close out, that we want to pick up again. And the last couple of pages were these supporting emails that I received from various people. So my little bullet point is more defined in the enclosed emails. So what we want to accomplish is to lay out a list of, we have 10 more months in this year, what the board would like to pursue going forward. Keep in mind also we have subcommittees that we've, including what we heard today. We have, I see Mr. Merchant is here talking about the different growth boundaries of the municipalities. And also we have asked for a litter subcommittee that hasn't gotten off the ground yet. And I'll take the blame for that. I haven't kickstarted the volunteers yet. So keep in mind that we do have several subcommittees already going. So what I'd like to do is I'll just go through these real quick for everybody. The Beaufort County is taking a plastic bag survey, and Chairperson Howard has asked to possibly March she present to the board the results of that. That's probably not a full meeting. We also had a request to bring up the unhoused population problem that seems to be growing It is also that our council from Hardyville has talked about, but again, that's another one that we're looking for guidance from this committee, or this board. Also, another thing that we're talking about in Jasper County, and Jasper County has their retreat today, so they're not here. How do we deliver fire and EMS services in both counties and have a discussion on alternative options? As we all know, we're starting increasingly to compete for the same workforce for police and fire. And the way it is structured, is there a better way? Or is the way we have the best way? But certainly that conversation has been asked to be brought forward. And we will be, we being Hardyville and Jasper County, the subject of shared services is something we're going to promote. We've had a request to invite Courtney Kimmel to discuss the wetlands protection, and that email is in your packet. I added A and B, that we should also, this is a regional committee, invite Jasper County, because as most of you probably know, they do have a moratorium in place in an attempt to preserve parts of their county. So they should be part. And also, Kate Schaefer of the Open Land Trust, I understand there are, through the Open Land Trust, designated, quote, green areas that perhaps Kate could share with us those areas that want to preserve. This particularly comes up because both Beaufort and now Jasper County, they passed a referendum, will have funds that will be accumulated for Greenbelt initiatives. Lobby our state delegations to protect hunting dogs from abandonment. Mrs. Guzman, who was elected a few weeks ago to be Hardyville's mayor pro tem. I tease her all the time because she is the first Sri Lankan woman to serve in that capacity in the city of Hardyville. We both have this thing about rescues, and right now there's no law protecting hunting dogs. Apparently, there's what we hear from the rescues that people can just abandon their hunting dogs after they're done with them, and they're being left, and so there's legislation protecting some of this, but not hunting dogs. And that would be a similar initiative, just like, any initiative where we jointly send a note to our delegation. Do we want to analyze the sales referendums in Beaufort and Jasper County? Beaufort failed, as we know, and Jasper passed. What effect will that have, and if there's any opinions on what Beaufort County should do in the future? Discussion on how to prevent overdevelopment, and that probably ties into the Greenbelt initiatives as well. Review of each jurisdiction's comprehensive plans. And also what we've done in the past is ask each jurisdiction to give a 15-minute presentation of what their goals are for the coming year. Now, some of them, we did ours yesterday. Jasper County's doing theirs today. I don't know. There's different schedules for different jurisdictions. So those are the recommendations that have been put forward. Now it's up to us as a group to decide what would we like to talk about in the next 10 months. So to kind of frame the discussion, let's start with these suggestions. If anybody wants to comment on either yes or no, or saying the first one should be the last one, any order of priority that you want to offer to the board to consider. I'll open it up first to the board members to make any comments or suggestions.
I'd start by saying, analyzing our sales tax referendums in Beaufort and Jasper County should be on the top of our list, personally.
I think that would be helpful myself. Any other board member have any opinion?
What exactly does that mean, analyze?
Well, I think
Vague.
in terms of this board, it's an open discussion on what they think should be, what their thoughts are, what their observations were. And also, I think it probably would include whether or not they think Beaufort County should pass or put forth a referendum in 2026.
Okay, just clarifying.
Do you have any, as a member of this board,
Well, I can tell
do you
you,
have an opinion on that?
we're setting our priorities February 4th, so we'll be able to do the jurisdictional goals. And obviously, the transportation referendum's on the top of our list because we now have a bridge hanging over our head. Got it? So that would be interesting to hear people's perspectives. We're doing a listening tour with constituents. I think it's great to hear perspectives. I know Jasper County passed, which we have lessons learned from that, is all I'm going to say there. And we get it. So I think it would be a good discussion. And it would be good for people who maybe see this when they can't sleep at 2 in the morning, to see the discussion. I watch all these on video at 2 in the morning.
It seems like in Beaufort County, every referendum is either transportation or education. So there's both competing interests, so I don't know what's gonna take precedence going forward.
Well, we have a third one in there, which is capital projects. We have a law enforcement center we'd like to do, and no funding for that either, so
True, and
it's all up.
in Beaufort County, I would like to see some point of discussion of local option sales tax. We're one of 3 counties or 4 counties in the state that doesn't have it. And it's an extra stream of income. Not only that, the beauty of it is it's a win-win for the property owner because they get 71% of that money has to go to actual.
That's on the table too. Yeah.
3 years ago?
Yeah. So everything comes back.
Right.
It's a big circle.
So that sounds like there's a lot of thoughts and observations that perhaps we should make this a conversation for one of the meetings. Anyone else on the suggestions that are put forward? Anybody want to add their support or their opinion on whether or not we should discuss that topic?
Mayor.
Yes.
As you know, we recommended one, which was the wetland protection. That's one thing that we're doing right now because, for those that don't know, the Supreme Court ruling out there are no more freshwater wetlands. It has to be contiguous to a navigable water source and actually touching. That is a big impact for us, and I assume it's going to be a big impact for others, especially Hardyville, that are a little more inland. So we're actually contracting with somebody to help us draft language on that is defendable in court, because what we've heard from the state legislators is that's not something they see as a priority in this legislative session. And I think the longer that lingers out there, the more risk there is for wetlands to be impacted and lead to more potential flooding and long-term risk for the region. So, again, that's one that I would say I would recommend. I think our council has supported that. They voted on it last month to spend a couple $100,000 to move forward to do that. So that's one I would push.
I'll just bring up really quick while we're on that topic. I actually just had a conversation with Representative Erickson about this a couple days ago, and she followed up with SCDS to see if, I guess they met a week ago, and they were providing a summary of what took place in that conversation, and she was going to share that with us whenever it came back. So hopefully we'll see an update on what the state's position is shortly.
I know when we talked to ours, there were no pre-filed bills or anything with it, so that's why I made the statement I made. So hopefully they'll decide to do something.
Certainly, that the land preservation also in the city of Hardyville is one of the objectives we talked about in our retreat yesterday as well. So I think Hardyville would support that conversation as well.
Mr. Mayor, I like the studying how we deliver fire and EMS services. And I'm going to say that's been on the radar of county council for the last 2 years I've been on it, and it's gone nowhere. But that's very important. We have all these fire districts. They all charge something different. They all have to complete their budget with us. It's very confusing, and I think there could be some consolidation possibly. I'm not an expert, but we should look at how to best fund them and best use the expenditures, because I'm not quite sure we're doing that.
Yeah, again, speaking to Hardyville, because we had our retreat yesterday, working with Jasper County and discussing shared services and overlaps is something on our council's mind as well. So I think we would support that also.
Okay.
I'm interested in the study of solutions for regional unhoused population challenge. We recently on the island had a warming shelter, and it was amazing to me the number of folks who were employed with employers like Sea Pines were among the folks who came to the shelter because housing costs have gotten so high that it's difficult to find places to live. So I think that is definitely a challenge that is only going to get worse.
And this was put forward by the town of Bluffton, the mayor and the administrator both supported that as well.
Buford.
And Buford, that's what I meant, I'm
I
sorry.
would say I concur. My wife's a teacher on Hilton Head, and the number of people they have living in vehicles and transient it's growing. We're seeing it in Bluffton and our parks, and I know Scott had mentioned it in the email that he sent. So I think part of the bigger issue is it needs to be regional because none of us have a shelter. I know we're trying to get a warming shelter. None of our churches are stepping up, or private groups or private entities are stepping up. So I think I agree. I agree. And I don't mean to speak for the mayor or council, but I think they would support that as well.
And I don't know if there is an identified plan for this discussion aside from what's listed here, but just as a note, I was invited to a conversation tomorrow with Heather Carver. She's the director for 180 Place in Charleston, and the conversation is in regards to homeless diversion and unhoused problem solving. So I'm not sure how that would go, but maybe it'd be of value to have her do a presentation on some of their recent initiatives and the success that they've had in Charleston for this topic.
Josh, if you could send me that information, because typically when I set these agendas, I'll ask like today we had Orlando, I'll ask someone to give and lead the discussion as opposed to just opening it up. We'll bring in, like Bluffton suggested, this Courtney Kimmel. But I always try to bring somebody in. So to follow up on your suggestion, if you send me the invitation or her information, I'll invite her to give us a presentation.
Okay, I'll do that.
Because that seems to be something on everybody's mind. And there's two parts to that. There's the day-to-day unhoused population, but as we all recently dealt with, that unhoused population, when it's 19 degrees outside, we don't have places for them to go temporarily. So that could be an A-B topic. Would you like to see the results of the plastic bag survey? That is something that probably will come up in Beaufort County, and I know that Tab and Alice Howard, they put that topic forward. Probably wouldn't be, Tab, a whole.
It would be short.
Yeah, it would be short. We could make it part of a multi-part agenda.
And I hope everybody takes the survey. It's about 3 minutes, and you'll be surprised what they ask.
Can y'all resend the survey out and we'll share it as well?
Sure.
Or is it still going on?
Oh, yeah, it's on until March 1st.
Okay.
How about if I send it to Harry and he can put it out to everyone?
I'll put it out to the board and our mailing list.
Do you have it, Harry, or do you need it?
I don't think I have it, Tab.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Well, I think that will keep us busy for quite a number of months, because some of these topics, like the wetlands protection, that may be more than one meeting. So,
Combined with that would be development in general.
right.
It's all part of a bigger picture. And where should
Good
growth
point.
go and what should be protected and
Well, and I think that carries into one of the identified priorities that we had from last year, and it's hard to identify and see the identified priorities and then know that all of these didn't get discussed or addressed, and then kind of move those to the wayside and create a new list of priorities. But I would definitely tie in the resiliency and natural disasters, which was identified as a medium priority, to the what seems to be now the prevent overdevelopment. We had, or the county had, a green print plan. I don't know that the full report is out or that the overlay is built into the GIS system, but you could still find the targeted green space areas that came from that study, and then some of the resiliency recommendations. So maybe taking a deeper dive into implementing some of those suggestions from the study would be helpful. But I think that priority could just carry over to into the development conversation.
So that conversation definitely got to be more than one meeting. So what I have is that we'll tie in the fourth bullet point, A and B, and the discussion on how to prevent overdevelopment. We'll tie that in, as well as I made a note to have the green space study, and perhaps we can have Kate help us with that as well. Anyone from the public have any suggestions for our agenda for 2025? Wow. Let's see. Ladies first, please.
Sorry, Jocelyn. Good morning, Taylor Ladd, Planning Manager for Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer. I think this will tie in really well with some of the conversations that you're having, but next month we are kicking off our Water and Sewer Master Planning Initiative. And I am lucky enough to receive the assignment as project manager. So I look forward to engaging with your staff and many elected officials on this project. It will be very heavily grounded in planning, land planning conversation, discussion, and looking at growth and projections. Of course, there will be your typical engineering and technical side to it, but very much foundational with the planning discussion will be a part of this plan. We expect it will look kind of like, I guess, what you guys are used to seeing as a comprehensive plan. And as a planner coming from a municipal background, I can't help but tie that in there. So I just want to offer that. We're looking at delivery probably late summer for this project, but I'd like to offer providing an update or some kind of short presentation about our findings and the process as well.
Thank you. That's
Can I ask one question before she says?
sure.
Sure.
So, nice to meet you first. But one of the things that we had as a high priority last year was the update on capacity and priorities, and then coming out of the update that we received from Beaufort Jasper was you guys are essentially at capacity, and then it was determined that about 50% of what's being used, it goes towards irrigation. So my question is there value in us having a conversation regarding green infrastructure and potentially reducing the amount of runoff to the system? Because another one of our issues that we're trying to tackle is stormwater. So is there value in a green infrastructure conversation from Beaufort Jasper's position?
I think that could be a little more in the details than what we're after with this master planning effort. It's more high level, but I can certainly see a recommendation coming out of the master plan would be to go in that direction and looking more closely at a policy to address that kind of green infrastructure.
We could address those additional questions when we invite Beaufort Jasper. We did have them in last year, but they went over the capacity issues.
Right.
and what they were doing. Verna spoke to the group last year.
Right. Yeah, and given the growth that we've all experienced exponentially in this area, we're kicking off a new master planning. This will be a brand new master plan so that we can be sure and include these observations and get good, solid data from staff and the planners who are working in the area with developer input as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Jocelyn.
Hi, everyone. I am Jocelyn Steiger, the Government Affairs Director for the Beaufort Jasper County Realtors and the Hilton Head Area Realtors. It's nice to see you all. I bring this up at each municipality, the council meetings and Soloco and county meetings. Affordable and workforce housing, attainable housing. We've discussed it ad nauseum. All of you have. It's not on the list. Yet, what I continue to hear at each council meeting for everyone's jurisdictions is stop growth, stop development, preserve land. Now you're talking about finding housing also for homelessness. So I've been saying for years that I think these two things are directly opposed to each other, and I don't understand how we can keep doing both in all of our jurisdictions. If you want to stop growth and you want to stop development and you want to preserve land, then you can't have high density affordable housing developments or the things that are needed to be done to get this housing built. So I don't know if it's an agenda item or discussion, but we can't keep doing both. They're in opposition, and I want to keep affordable and workforce housing at the top of everybody's lists, even though I know you're all working on it. Thank you.
So perhaps we can make that a part A to the conversation of, overdevelopment and preservation, because like you said, it's sometimes, and many of these issues, there's competing objectives, and so I wrote it down. Dan, you're the last one before adjournment.
Mayor, a lot of this, what I'm about to ask, I think will probably reveal itself on some of the wetland discussions. But the stormwater issues and flooding. During the last hurricane period, Bluffton had substantial flooding. One development has been hit twice in 8 years, and I'm talking water waist deep, numerous houses impacted. So we've started having some general discussions about that, and the cost would be prohibitive. And most of these jurisdictions were built on a 25-year storm system, which is inadequate by today's standards. So a lot of the PUDs do not have the resources to go in and rebuild these storm drains. So anyway, what I'm asking is, and again, I hope that leads itself into some of the wetland discussion and preservation, but I would hope that, and Stephen, I'm asking you to find out from the other jurisdictions who did have flooding and the magnitude of the flooding, because this is not going away anytime soon. I can only imagine a neighborhood that just flooded twice in 8 years getting flooded again in another 2 years. I know Hilton Head had the opportunity years ago because they were flooding, and they were able, just the nature of the design of the land with the lagoon systems, they were able to go in and take over control of the stormwater systems from other PUDs, and then they put their own pumping system around the island. So that, that's a unique opportunity that Hilton Head had. But anyway, I just want to make sure that gets looked at and discussed in great detail, because it's going to be cost prohibitive. And I've already talked to the state, Senator Davis and others about, future funding for some of this, because no one jurisdiction is going to be able to do it on their own. Thank you.
It's not just flooding, the sea level rise as well, particularly for us.
You wouldn't think we had any more problem with global warming after last week, though.
Mr. Merchant.
Thank goodness.
I apologize because I know you said the last speaker has already spoken.
I'm fickle. I'm fickle.
Yeah, I just wanted I think it's a good summary. A lot of the issues that came up, I think that this Soloco Growth Subcommittee could address, and I think that the question of overdevelopment and where we grow is closely related to affordable housing, because I think that, we want to make sure as a region we're targeting affordable housing in places where it makes sense, that's accessible to services. So I think it can be a win-win if we have a shared vision to preserve land in the right places and to concentrate growth in the right places. I think that it's not a yes growth or no growth. I think it's managed growth. And so I think that our subcommittee, we're prepared to come back. I would say in the March timeframe. I know that we have a lot of competing interests, but we are working with several groups. We're working with the military, with the Sentinel landscape about possible path forward to have some sort of workshop to look at regional growth issues that we'd like to come back to the committee and talk about.
So what I'll suggest is that on the March agenda, because we can do multiple things, we'll get an update from the survey, we'll get an update from Rob, your committee, and Mr. Lewis, I'll ask you if you want time to update your committee. So we use March as updates to committees, okay?
Okay, great.
And typically, on an ending note, what we'll do, and one of the reasons you voted it in the quote executive committee, prior to each month agenda, I send it to that executive committee. So Alan and Larry will approve each month's agenda, and I'll work this out, get it approved by the executive committee. And always what I try to do, like next month, I'll ask if it's okay what you want for March. So right now, based on my notes, what I'll put down is I'll invite Beaufort and Jasper County for February to give a brief overview of their goals, and that could lead into the discussion on any input we want to give in terms of referendums. And that could be transportation, capital, green space, whatever Beaufort comes back and says their goals. So I'll tie those in together. Does that sound okay for this board for February?
It does.
Okay. Sorry, I've held a 70-minute meeting. It doesn't happen often, but it was a great discussion, so I think it was worth the extra 10 minutes. And thank you for coming and giving us your time. See you February.
Mayor.
Angie, tell Mayor Perry.
Mayor, real quick, just before you close out, there was something you brought up last meeting, and it was in regards to having a more formal systemized maybe delegates to the subcommittees to help out. Is that something that maybe you already did or you still want to do?
Thank you. I didn't do that.
I didn't know if maybe we wanted to bring a list of the subcommittees next meeting and then identify who was going to be the liaison to that subcommittee.
I did ask for that. So, everybody, would you just, one quick note, please send me
At ease.
your delegation, okay? Like who's the elections, who's the, okay. But if anything's changed, like, you know, you're still there, Phil, and your administrator's still there, it's your council. And Josh. I think you're on the list. Okay. Thank you again. Sorry.